Of the Australian Prime Minister as well, reaffirming his country's support for Ukraine after the tense Oval Office exchange between the US President and the Ukrainian President. Albanese is saying that Australia stands with Ukraine, underscoring the continued international backing for Kyiv.
We stand with Ukraine. I've had meetings with President Zelenskyy on multiple occasions, including, of course, in Kyiv, in Ukraine, where I travelled very early on in my Prime Ministership. And this year, we've seen that land war in Europe go on for 3 years. The people of Ukraine are fighting not just for their own national sovereignty. They are fighting for the international rule of law. Australia has committed some $1.5 billion to help Ukraine defend itself. More than $1.3 billion of that is military support. We will continue to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes, because this is the struggle of a democratic nation versus an authoritarian regime led by Vladimir Putin, who clearly has imperialistic designs not just on Ukraine, but throughout that region.
All right, with that, let's get you more breaking updates coming in. French President Emmanuel Macron has also reiterated his strong support for Ukraine, calling Russia the aggressor and emphasizing the need to continue aid and sanctions. In fact, he has taken to social media to thank allies, including the United States, Europe, Canada and Japan, for standing with Kyiv, stating that Ukraine is fighting for dignity, independence and security of Europe. So here's what he says. He has said there is an aggressor, Russia. There is a victim, Ukraine. We were right to help Ukraine and sanction Russia 3 years ago and to keep doing so. By we, I mean the Americans, the Europeans, the Canadians, the Japanese and many others. And then he also goes on to thank the allies. He says, thank you to all who have helped and continue to do so, and respect to those who have been fighting since the beginning, because they are fighting for their dignity, their independence, their children and the security of Europe. So France has backed Ukraine. We saw Australia, it has backed Ukraine. The European Union and many of the nations also backing Ukraine. So, Ambassador, what would this mean? Is this going to further bring in a divide? What are we looking at? Because the European nations are quite clear that they are backing Ukraine. Is this going to put them in conflict with the United States by taking a stance at a time when there has been a tense standoff at the Oval Office?
Well, that's a very interesting question, ma'am. Once again, with my years in diplomacy, let me answer this as best as I can. What will the Europeans do? What Albanese has said, the Australian, we support Ukraine. What does that mean? Are you going to send your soldiers there to fight? When Trump said you are playing with World War III, he wasn't joking. It wasn't an exaggeration. But you send in troops, the Europeans, particularly the French fellow has been saying, I'll send troops there, peacekeepers, etc. That peacekeeping business is all over. Nothing is going to happen. You send in troops, you kill Russians. Europe is next door to Russia. And Putin has made it clear that he would then exercise his ultimate option for the survival of the Russian people. It's not a question of Ukraine's survival. It's a question of the Russian Federation survival as a federation. Of course, the Europeans want to break it up, etc. They feel threatened. Now, ma'am, you've talked about security guarantee. What does that mean? Does that mean NATO? Or does it mean that if Putin decides to give a couple of tight slaps to Zelenskyy, all of Europe will rush in to defend him? No, they won't. I don't understand this term security guarantee. Basically, what he is saying is, he had said this before, I will quit, but give me NATO. He's not going to get NATO. There is no question. And if push comes to shove, if the United States says, all right, NATO, nice knowing you, I'm going home, all hell will break loose in Europe. Europe without America is zero, ma'am. I'm saying this very, very clearly, very openly, with a full sense of responsibility. All these years, the feeling in European capitals was, look, let's enjoy ourselves. The French called it the belle époque. Let's enjoy this great time that we are having. And if there's a war, we'll call Washington. They'll come and fight for us. Not anymore. not with this transactional president. So Europe will have to look after its own security. How will 27, 28 members of whatever the European Union, how will they decide? Their militaries are different, their people are different. Why should, for example, Poland is now beginning to understand this. Hungary has been understanding this. Romania has been talking about. Why should we die for Ukraine? What is in it for us? Just because he doesn't like Putin? Ma'am, these are hard questions. One is the public stance. One is what goes on behind the scenes in rooms where fellows like me spend sleepless nights trying to work out compromises. But I see no way out after what Donald Trump has said, except for Mr. Zelenskyy to quit and open a restaurant somewhere and be a stand-up comic. I'm not, I may say this lightheartedly, but the reality is he has to go. He is seen as an obstacle to peace. And the only nation that can bring peace in Ukraine, the only two nations, the two strong men, is Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Nobody else matters. Where are the talks taking place, ma'am, between Russia and America? In Riyadh. What's happened to Geneva? What's happened to Norway? All the preferred European capitals for negotiation. Out. Nobody worries about them. They are talking in Riyadh because he also wants Riyadh support in Gaza. And Zelensky's comment about America's Gulf policy being a potential disaster. No, you don't say things like this. The man is a schoolboy. I mean, he shouldn't be making comments like this. So my feeling is that Russia and America will go regardless of what Europe does, because Europe will fall in line. Europe will not risk the transatlantic alliance for the sake of a comic actor called Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
Okay, that's interesting. So many of the European leaders may be coming out in support, but they are not going to risk it. That's your understanding of that. We just want to play out for our viewers, and you have to see it to believe it, what happened at the Oval Office. This was a meeting of the two world leaders, a meeting that was watched by the entire world, and it quickly escalated to an actual war of words with voices being raised. Take a look at the fiery exchange.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to...
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring people, you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You
God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this.
I'm not dictating.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards.
Playing cards.
Right now, you don't. Yeah, you're playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're playing cards.
Serious.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. It's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot of times.
No, in this entire meeting, you said thank you.
Even today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the President who's trying to save your country.